spoke about, leadership evolving over the years. It was very hierarchical in the past. Same with medicine. What do you think may have caused this shift now? And do you think we're in the right place now? Like, is this how leadership should be? What's working, what's not working, and what's going to work well?
I do think that leadership has evolved and will continue to evolve. I think society changes, and what's acceptable at societal level is reflected in the workplace. So, that's reflected in just actually the role of women in the workplace and how that's changed over time. What was acceptable 20 years ago is completely unacceptable now, and that will continue to evolve. And I think, the workplace needs to keep pace with that. So I think leadership styles will change and will need to change in line with that. If, a big process that during the pandemic took place was the unfortunate incident of George Floyd's murder and how to deal with that. That's something that no one really prepares you for. And it would have been dealt with very differently 20 years ago to with how it was dealt with now. Now, I think we're all still on that learning journey, but we'll find that things will change as we, in society and in communities and in business and the way we do business as we progress. And we just need to make sure we're keeping ahead of that, always looking for those trends and trying to stay ahead of that, at least keeping pace with it. And critically getting feedback on an ongoing basis to say, are we keeping that pace, and listening to the rest of the team.
That's so true. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. What would you say have been your key learnings over the past year and a half?
I was always quite old school about work from home. I thought that people needed to be in a structured environment in order to be productive. Well, I've been proven completely wrong on that one. I do think there's a place for a workplace, but I do think that we've all shown each other that we can work very productively in an environment that's not necessarily a structured workplace. So big learning for me, and I think that'll certainly be something we are looking at coming out of the pandemic, is what does the workplace of the future look like? The other learning for me was just amazing how when the chips are down and there are threats, how people band together to make sure that they're doing their best. And so the big learning for me is really the good in people. And this extends way beyond the Closing the Gap team, the healthcare system, but just, the population in general. If you look at all the positive stories that have come out of this pandemic, has really been, I think, quite reaffirming, actually. And something we've got to learn when we come out of this, the whole concept of being kind, trying to understand people where they are and that they might have something else going on in their lives when they are not behaving as you'd expect them to. Look and say, is there a reason? Look at the cause, those sort of things. So I think from someone who has a clinical background and is quite used to looking at things clinically, I think I've probably learned a few softer skills during this time as well that'll probably do me some good in the last few years of my career.
And what do you think you've learned about leading a remote team, Leighton? So how different is it than, you said you were old school, so it was that structured workplace. So how different is it to lead a remote team? And, what did you learn about yourself in this process?
Well, first thing, I suppose that it's possible and that it's possible to do it well. It really does depend on the willingness of the team to actually get together and be cohesive. But certainly for me, I think it's been communication. When you're in a structured environment in an office, it's very easy to communicate informally with people. So I think I've had to be a lot more intentional about communication, and that whether that is just with one-on-ones or even with small groups of people or the entire company or with some of our collaborative partners, is intentional communication. I think has been really the one big learning for me, is that it has to happen that way. And then, feedback, just accepting feedback, because I needed to learn to work differently, but also to give feedback to those around me on whether they could optimize the way they were coming across, whether they were misunderstood because of the way they came across in a meeting. It's very easy to be misunderstood when you are in a new environment. So I think communication, feedback, and honesty have really been the big positives for me.
And would you say it helped you to be more efficient, working remotely, or it didn't make a difference?
No, I think I've probably worked more efficiently because I've got more time in the evenings now. I'm working more efficiently during the day. Also, I've had to be more intentional about getting exercise, because it's very easy at the end of a work day to fit exercise in. But when your work day is not defined, it's very easy to find yourself at 7:30 not having exercised.
Right.
So I've had to be, sort of more structured in a way of finding times to exercise, generally early mornings, but not always. But I think efficiency has gone up. There's no doubt. I'm spending more time at my desk.
You are spending more time at your desk.
Absolutely, sure. But I think it's more concentrated and probably
Focused
more effective time. Yeah.
Most executives, most leaders, the resource that they struggle most with is time, because time is our priority. That's, it's limited in many ways. And how we use our time makes such a huge difference in what we want to achieve. So how do you go about scheduling your month, your week, your day? What tricks have worked for you in terms of managing your own time, your own priorities?
I suppose discipline is one, is just making sure that if I've got something planned, to stick to it, unless it's impossible to do. But I'm a great one for planning my time well ahead. So even exercise sessions, if you go into my diary now, you'll see they're blocked off in the mornings, just so that anyone who's trying to sneak in and listen, it is at 6:30 in the morning, so I don't think many people but if someone was thinking about it.
How far ahead do you plan?
It depends what it is. So if it's something that I need to book, so I do a lot of spinning and I can only book 2 weeks ahead. So I've always got a running 2-week cycle of spinning in my diary. But then I have a trainer on a Monday morning, so that's in perpetuity. Monday morning, 6:30, the trainer's in there. So it really depends on the booking cycles for whatever it is. But so to make sure that it's in my diary, then it's non-negotiable. Then it's also in my diary, I've committed myself, I'm there. So that's helped. And then also making time during the day. What I did do was start blocking off half an hour in the middle of the day just to make sure that I could actually get up and grab some lunch, because otherwise that wasn't happening either. So it comes down to scheduling and discipline.
And it's so true. It is about the discipline and, really putting it into your calendar so it's there and you're going to do it. And do you do the same thing with work, as in checking emails at certain times, or do you just keep it as in the prompts come and you check it right away? And, do you have focused time blocks where you're working on something and you're not distracted by anything else? Like, how do you generally schedule time to do those kinds of things?
And I suppose it's a combination. I definitely set time aside. If I've got a big task to do, if I've got a big document to write, or something to do, or something I'm working on, I set time aside to do that. And then I don't look at my emails because it's very easy to get distracted. I have to admit that I do get, especially if I'm waiting for something, I do get distracted waiting for an email to come in. So that's a discipline thing that I don't think I've quite mastered. Absolutely, it is that, if I'm waiting for something to come in, or, if I'm expecting a problem or something, I do wait for it. So that I don't think I've got entirely right. But generally, I set time aside to do the tasks that I have sort of planned. And I'm pretty good at sticking to it. What I have done just recently is iPhone has something that stops your notifications after a certain time. So I don't get notifications between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.